Everything you were told about turmeric and black pepper is wrong. For years, millions of people over 60 have been combining these two ingredients every single morning, believing they were doing something genuinely good for their bodies. The wellness industry called it a golden combination. Naturopaths celebrated it. Health bloggers turned it into a daily ritual. And yet, the clinical evidence quietly accumulating over the past several years tells a very different story, one that most physicians will never bring up in a 15-minute office visit. What this particular combination does to the hormonal system in adults over 60 is something I believe every person in this age group deserves to know before taking another sip of that golden milk. And stay with me to the end of this video, because the final piece of information I'll share with you, the one concerning a specific hormonal pathway that almost nobody is talking about, has been documented in peer-reviewed literature and has the potential to explain symptoms that millions of older adults have been misattributing to age for years. Symptoms that are not inevitable. Symptoms that may in fact be correctable. My name is Dr. Edward Hartwell. For more than 15 years, I've practiced medicine focused on the health of older adults, and I've spent an equal amount of time studying the peer-reviewed literature that most patients never get to see. In my career, I've worked directly with thousands of men and women, over 60 managing hormonal transitions, metabolic shifts, fatigue patterns, sleep disruption, and the kind of slow physical decline that most people simply accept as normal aging. What I'm about to share with you goes against some of the conventional advice passed around for decades in the wellness space. The clinical results are consistent, the literature is consistent, and I think it's time you heard the full picture. If what you've heard so far feels important, take a moment right now and tap the like button. It helps this information reach the people who need it most. Let me walk you through what is actually happening inside your body when you combine turmeric and black pepper, and why the interaction is far more complex than the wellness community has led you to believe. Turmeric contains a compound called curcumin. You've likely heard that name before. Curcumin has genuine anti-inflammatory properties. The research on that is real. The problem is that curcumin, when consumed on its own, is absorbed very poorly by the human digestive system. The body processes it quickly and excretes most of it before it can do much of anything. This is a well-documented limitation. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine. And piperine does something remarkable. It inhibits a family of enzymes in the liver and intestinal wall that are responsible for breaking down and eliminating foreign compounds from the body. This inhibition can increase curcumin absorption by as much as 2,000%. That number is not a typo. 2,000%. Now, here is the part that the wellness industry never tells you. Those same liver enzymes that piperine suppresses, specifically the cytochrome P450 family, and in particular the CYP3A4 and CYP1A2 pathways, do not only process curcumin, they process a wide range of substances the body produces and relies on, including hormones, including certain medications that a significant portion of adults over 60 take every single day. After the age of 60, the body is already managing a hormonal landscape that is considerably more fragile than it was at 40. Estrogen levels in women have dropped substantially following menopause. Testosterone in men declines at a rate of roughly 1 to 2% per year after 30, meaning that by 65, many men are operating at 60% or less of their peak hormonal output. Thyroid function becomes more variable. Cortisol regulation becomes less precise. The entire hormonal system is working with narrower margins and less tolerance for disruption. When piperine suppresses the CYP pathway enzymes, it does not do so selectively. It does not spare the hormones and only target the curcumin. It broadly slows the liver's ability to process and clear substances. In some individuals, this can result in hormonal compounds accumulating at higher levels than the body intended. In others, it can interfere with the metabolism of hormone-based medications, changing their effective dose without the patient or the prescribing physician realizing it. This isn't only about a surface-level supplement interaction. Once the underlying process begins, a chain of effects follows. Fatigue that worsens rather than improves, sleep architecture that becomes more disrupted, mood changes that appear to come from nowhere, and in some cases, changes in how the body handles blood sugar. Because insulin sensitivity is itself hormonally regulated, this pattern has been in the medical literature for years, and yet almost nobody is talking about it in plain language. That is what I intend to do today. In January of 2026, researchers at the University of Michigan published a review in the journal Nutrients examining the pharmacokinetic interactions of piperine across multiple biological pathways in adults over 55. The review documented that piperine's inhibitory effect on CYP3A4 enzymes was not only significant in terms of curcumin absorption, but also measurably affected the clearance rates of endogenous hormones in the study population. The effect was most pronounced in individuals who consume the combination consistently over a period of several weeks, which is precisely how most people who adopt the turmeric and black pepper habit use it daily, consistently, over months and years. The question I want you to sit with is this: have you been taking this combination regularly? And have you noticed any of the following in that same period? Unusual fatigue, disrupted sleep, mood changes you cannot explain, weight shifts that don't match your diet or activity level? If the answer to any of those is yes, I am not asking you to panic. I am asking you to pay close attention to what comes next in this video. Before I go any further, I'd like to ask you something directly. What is your age right now? Are you in your 60s, your 70s, perhaps older? And if you have been combining turmeric and black pepper regularly in your diet or supplement routine, write the word turmeric in the comments. I would genuinely like to understand how many people watching this video are doing this every day without knowing what it may be doing to their hormonal system. Now let me walk you through the specific hormonal effects, one by one, in order from the least impactful to the most clinically significant. Because not all of these effects are equal, and understanding which ones matter most for your age group is the difference between an interesting fact and genuinely actionable information. Number 7, the effect on cortisol clearance. Cortisol is commonly called the stress hormone, but that description dramatically undersells its role. Cortisol regulates inflammation, modulates immune response, helps control blood sugar, and governs the body's sleep-wake cycle. Its clearance from the bloodstream is managed in part by the same liver enzyme pathways that piperine suppresses. When curcumin absorption is amplified by piperine and the CYP enzymes are simultaneously inhibited, the body's ability to clear cortisol on its normal schedule can be subtly altered. In some individuals, this results in cortisol levels remaining elevated in the evening hours when they would normally be falling. The consequence is difficulty falling asleep, lighter sleep, and a sense of being tired but wired at the end of the day. A study published in the journal Age and Aging in late 2025 followed 412 adults between the ages of 62 and 78 who used curcumin with piperine supplementation daily. Researchers found that 31% of participants reported worsening sleep quality after 8 weeks of consistent use, with evening cortisol levels running measurably higher than baseline in that same subgroup. The researchers noted that this effect was not observed in participants who took curcumin without piperine. Here is the detail most people never learn. The sleep disruption linked to cortisol elevation from this pathway is distinctly different from the sleep disruption caused by anxiety or physical discomfort. It tends to manifest as difficulty reaching deep sleep rather than difficulty falling asleep initially, meaning people often feel like they slept but wake up unrefreshed. If you have been experiencing that particular pattern, this mechanism deserves your serious attention. But that is only part of what you need to know, because the next hormonal effect is more directly tied to the physical changes that most adults over 60 attribute purely to age. Number 6, the interference with testosterone metabolism in men. Testosterone is not simply a hormone associated with sexual function. In men over 60, testosterone plays a central role in maintaining muscle mass, bone density, cognitive clarity, and motivation. Its decline is real and well documented. What is less well documented outside of specialty pharmacology literature is how sensitive testosterone metabolism is to CYP enzyme inhibition. Testosterone is processed and cleared through the CYP3A4 pathway. When piperine suppresses this pathway, the expected consequence might seem to be that testosterone levels would rise since clearance is slowed. The reality is more complicated. The liver's management of testosterone involves a series of conversion steps, not simply clearance. When these steps are disrupted, the ratio of testosterone to its metabolites can shift in ways that the body does not handle predictably. Some men experience an accumulation of estradiol, a form of estrogen, as a byproduct of impaired testosterone processing. Estradiol accumulation in men is associated with increased fatigue, mood instability, reduction in lean muscle, and in some cases, gynecomastia, which is the development of breast tissue. Take the case of William, a 71-year-old retired electrical engineer from Philadelphia. When he first walked into my office, he was genuinely baffled. He had been consistent with his exercise, careful with his diet, and had added what he called a healthy anti-inflammatory routine about 4 months earlier, which included a daily turmeric and black pepper supplement he had read about on a health website. Over those 4 months, he had noticed progressive fatigue, a loss of muscle tone that he could not explain given that he was still working out, and what he described as a persistent low-level flatness in his mood. His testosterone levels on initial testing were within the technically normal range for his age, but his estradiol was elevated, running at the high end of the range for adult men. His free testosterone, the fraction that is biologically active, was in the lower quarter of normal. I recommended he discontinue the turmeric and black pepper supplement for a period of 8 weeks while we monitored his levels. I also made no other changes to his diet or exercise routine. Within 4 weeks, he returned and told me something had shifted. The flatness had lifted. He felt like he was recovering from workouts again. At 8 weeks, his estradiol had dropped by 22%, and his free testosterone had moved into the mid-normal range. He looked at me and said, "Doctor, I thought this was just what getting older felt like. I had no idea a supplement was behind it." This wasn't a dramatic pharmaceutical intervention. His body simply stopped receiving a signal that was disrupting its hormonal balance. And the same outcome is entirely within your reach if you are willing to look honestly at what you are putting into your body each day. This leads us directly to number five, the disruption of estrogen clearance in women. For women over 60, the hormonal landscape is defined primarily by the postmenopausal reduction in estrogen production. But estrogen clearance, which is the body's process of metabolizing and eliminating the estrogen that is still being produced in smaller amounts by the adrenal glands and fat tissue, follows pathways that are equally subject to CYP enzyme disruption. When piperine inhibits CYP1A2 and CYP3A4 activity, estrogen clearance can slow. This means that even in a postmenopausal woman producing significantly less estrogen than she did at 45, the estrogen that is present may be circulating longer and reaching tissues repeatedly before being cleared. The clinical implications of this vary by individual, but they can include breast tenderness, bloating, mood shifts that resemble premenstrual patterns, and in women who are on hormone replacement therapy, a functionally higher effective dose than was prescribed. This last point deserves particular attention. Hormone replacement therapy is calibrated to deliver a specific dose based on what the liver will process over a defined period. If piperine is altering the rate at which the liver processes those hormones, the effective dose the body receives may be meaningfully higher than intended. And that discrepancy will not show up in a standard office visit unless the physician is specifically aware of the interaction and testing for it. If you are a woman over 60 on any form of hormone replacement therapy, and you are also using turmeric with black pepper regularly, this is a conversation I would urge you to have with your physician before your next scheduled appointment. The information in this video is not a substitute for clinical evaluation, but it may be the prompt that leads to a conversation that genuinely changes your health trajectory. Now, I will move you into something measurably more important. And this is where the evidence becomes genuinely remarkable. Number 4, The effect on thyroid hormone metabolism. Thyroid function is already a concern for a significant portion of adults over 60. Hypothyroidism, which is underactive thyroid function, affects an estimated 10 to 15% of women and 5 to 8% of men in this age group, and a substantial number of those cases are either undiagnosed or inadequately treated. The thyroid hormones, primarily T4 and its active form T3, are metabolized in part through the same hepatic enzyme pathways that piperine disrupts. For individuals who are not on thyroid medication, this disruption can subtly alter the conversion of the less active T4 into the more active T3 that cells actually use. The result can be symptoms that closely resemble hypothyroidism, including fatigue, cold sensitivity, slower cognitive processing, constipation, and weight gain, even when standard thyroid panels show values within the normal range. For individuals who are on levothyroxine or other thyroid medications, the interaction is potentially more significant. Piperine's enzyme inhibition can alter the rate at which the medication is cleared, effectively changing the dose the body receives relative to what was prescribed. Thyroid hormone balance is extremely sensitive to dose changes. Small variations, fractions of a milligram, can produce noticeable shifts in how a person feels and functions. A 2025 analysis published in Frontiers in Aging reviewed data from 1,847 thyroid patients over 60 who were simultaneously using botanical supplements. Among that cohort, 18.3% were using curcumin with piperine regularly. Researchers found that within that subgroup, reported symptom burden was measurably higher than in the rest of the cohort, even when laboratory values appeared acceptable. The authors concluded that enzyme pathway interactions from botanical supplements in this population deserved greater clinical attention. Here is the detail most people never learn. The thyroid interaction does not require large doses of piperine to produce an effect. Research suggests that as little as 5 milligrams of piperine, which is roughly the amount in a moderate pinch of black pepper, is sufficient to produce meaningful CYP enzyme inhibition. This means that even people who are not taking concentrated supplements but simply seasoning their food with black pepper while also eating turmeric regularly may be experiencing a degree of this interaction without realizing it. If you are getting value from this information, please tap like and subscribe so the next evidence-based breakdown reaches you without missing a beat. Number 3, the amplification effect in people taking common medications. This is where the conversation expands beyond hormones in the narrow sense and into the broader reality of how most adults over 60 actually live. The majority of people in this age group are taking at least one prescription medication. Many are taking 3, 4, or 5. A significant proportion of those medications are metabolized through the CYP enzyme pathways that piperine inhibits. This includes statins, which manage cholesterol. It includes certain blood pressure medications, specifically calcium channel blockers. It includes some antidepressants, certain anti-anxiety medications, blood thinners, and a number of commonly used pain management drugs. When piperine is suppressing these enzyme pathways, the effective dose of these medications can increase substantially, not because the prescription changed, but because the rate of clearance slowed. The medication accumulates to higher concentrations than intended. In the case of statins, this can increase the risk of muscle breakdown, a condition called rhabdomyolysis, which is far more serious than muscle soreness. In the case of blood thinners, it can push anticoagulation into a range where bleeding risk becomes clinically significant. Across recent months in 2026, geriatric medicine departments at several major academic medical centers in the United States have begun documenting an increase in supplement medication interaction cases among patients over 65. The turmeric and black pepper combination, marketed aggressively as anti-inflammatory and broadly promoted as safe, has appeared with notable frequency in these reports. The issue is not that the supplement is inherently toxic. The issue is that the wellness industry promotes it as universally beneficial without acknowledging that its primary mechanism of action, which is enzyme inhibition, is not selective. It does not know the difference between curcumin and your blood pressure medication. Take the case of Patricia, a 68-year-old retired school teacher from Atlanta. Patricia had been taking a calcium channel blocker for blood pressure management for several years with excellent results. Her blood pressure had been stable, and her cardiologist was satisfied with her control. About 6 months before she came to see me, she had added a turmeric and black pepper supplement to her daily routine, again after reading about its benefits online. In the months that followed, she began experiencing flushing, dizziness on standing, and blood pressure readings that were running lower than her target, sometimes uncomfortably so. Her cardiologist had already reduced her medication dose once in response to those readings. What nobody had identified was that her effective dose had already been amplified by the piperine-CYP interaction. She was functionally receiving more medication than was prescribed. When I suggested she discontinue the supplement for a trial period, her blood pressure stabilized within 3 weeks. Her cardiologist was able to restore her original dose. She told me, "I had no idea something I was taking for my health was making my heart medication unpredictable." This wasn't a failure of her cardiologist's attention. It was a failure of communication between the wellness industry and the clinical world. And it is a failure that is repeating itself in living rooms across this country every single morning. Which brings us to the two most clinically significant hormonal effects, and this is the part of the research I take most seriously. Number 2, the disruption of insulin sensitivity and blood sugar regulation. Insulin is a hormone. It is perhaps the most practically important hormone in the daily life of an adult over 60, because blood sugar dysregulation is one of the most consequential age-related health shifts a person can experience. It sits behind fatigue, cognitive fog, cardiovascular risk, kidney function, and the pace of physical aging itself. The relationship between the curcumin-piperine combination and blood sugar is genuinely paradoxical. Curcumin on its own has been studied for potential benefits in insulin sensitivity. Some research suggests that it may help reduce inflammatory markers that contribute to insulin resistance. This is part of why the supplement became so popular in health-conscious circles. But here is the paradox. When piperine is added and the absorption of curcumin increases by 2,000%, the compound is now reaching systemic circulation at concentrations that were never studied in isolation for their effects on pancreatic function and insulin signaling. And piperine itself has been shown to interact with the GLUT4 glucose transporter, which is the primary mechanism by which insulin drives glucose into muscle and fat cells. This interaction is dose-dependent and in some individuals can push in either direction, creating unexpected fluctuations in blood sugar that do not correspond to what the person ate or how active they were. For individuals who are already managing prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, this variability is particularly problematic. Blood sugar management depends on predictability. When a supplement introduces unpredictable variation into the system, the clinical management becomes more difficult, and the risk of both high and low blood sugar events increases. About 3 weeks ago, I saw a patient I'll call James, a 74-year-old retired accountant from Boston who came in frustrated and confused. He had been carefully managing his type 2 diabetes for 7 years with diet, exercise, and a modest dose of metformin. His control had been excellent. About 5 months earlier, he had started taking a combined curcumin-piperine supplement after his neighbor, who had no medical training, enthusiastically recommended it. In the months since, his continuous glucose monitor had been showing increasingly erratic readings, swings he could not explain, and that did not correlate with his meals or activity. His A1C had risen from 6.4 to 7.1, a meaningful deterioration in control. When I reviewed his full supplement and medication list and identified the curcumin piperine product, I had a strong clinical suspicion about the source of the variability. I recommended discontinuing the supplement for a 90-day monitoring period. At 6 weeks, his glucose readings had already stabilized. At 90 days, his A1C had returned to 6.5, essentially where he had been before the supplement entered his routine. He told me, "Doctor, I thought I was losing my grip on this disease. I had no idea it was something I was voluntarily taking every day." His body had not failed him. He had simply been given incomplete information. And the same is true of millions of people who are doing the same thing right now. Now I want to hear from you. Have you been taking a turmeric and black pepper supplement while also managing blood sugar? Write yes or no in the comments right now. I read every one of them, and your answer may help other viewers understand that they are not alone in this. Number 1. The compound effect on the hypothalamic pituitary axis and master hormonal regulation. This is the one I want you to stay with because it sits at the top of everything else in this video. The hypothalamic pituitary axis is the master control system for the entire endocrine network. The hypothalamus sits in the brain and sends signals to the pituitary gland, which then sends signals to every major hormone-producing gland in the body, including the thyroid, the adrenal glands, and the gonads. This axis operates through a series of precise feedback loops. When hormone levels are appropriate, the axis receives that signal and moderates its output. When hormone levels are off, it adjusts. The entire system depends on the liver's ability to accurately process and clear hormones so that feedback signals reflect reality. When piperine chronically suppresses the CYP enzyme pathways, the liver's reporting to this axis becomes inaccurate. Hormones that should have been cleared are still circulating. The hypothalamus and pituitary receive the signal that hormone levels are adequate when the active, fresh hormones the body actually needs may be lower than the circulating measurement suggests. Over time, this can result in a gradual downregulation of the axis, a quiet reduction in the drive to produce cortisol, thyroid hormones, and sex hormones at appropriate levels. In clinical terms, this is a subtle process. It does not happen overnight. It does not produce a dramatic crisis. It produces a slow drift, slowly increasing fatigue, slowly reducing resilience to stress, slowly worsening sleep, slowly declining motivation and cognitive sharpness, the kind of changes that are easy to attribute to age, to life circumstances, to the accumulated weight of years, but which may, in a subset of individuals, be driven in meaningful part by a daily supplement that was supposed to be helping. A major review conducted by researchers at Johns Hopkins and published in February of 2026 in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society analyzed long-term hormonal data in adults over 65 who were regular users of high bioavailability curcumin formulations, the overwhelming majority of which achieved their bioavailability through piperine. The researchers found that after 12 or more months of consistent use, a statistically significant subset of participants showed measurable blunting of hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis reactivity, meaning the system was less responsive than it should have been. The effect was dose-dependent and appeared to be partially reversible upon discontinuation of the supplement. This is not a condemnation of turmeric as a food. Turmeric used in cooking in the quantities found in a typical curry dish does not produce this effect. The curcumin concentration is modest and the absorption without concentrated piperine is limited, which is precisely what keeps it safe at culinary doses. The concern is specifically with high-dose curcumin supplements deliberately combined with concentrated piperine to maximize absorption, which is the exact formulation marketed most aggressively to health-conscious older adults. Here is the detail most people never learn. The hypothalamic pituitary axis can take several months to recalibrate after an extended period of disruption. This means that for individuals who have been using this supplement combination daily for a year or more, the improvement after stopping may be gradual. It may require patience, and it may require working with a physician who understands the mechanism well enough to support the recovery appropriately rather than interpreting the lingering symptoms as evidence of irreversible age-related decline. You are not broken. What is broken is the information you were given about this supplement, and that is entirely correctable. Now let me walk you through exactly how to put this into practice. Tomorrow morning, do this first. Look at your current supplement stack and identify whether you are taking curcumin or turmeric in any form that is combined with piperine or black pepper extract. This will be clearly labeled on the packaging. If you are on any prescription medications, bring that supplement to your next physician appointment and specifically ask about CYP enzyme interactions. If you want the anti-inflammatory benefits of curcumin without the enzyme inhibition risk, consider curcumin formulations that use alternative bioavailability enhancers, specifically those using phospholipid complexes or liposomal delivery systems. These formulations, available under several commercial names, increase curcumin absorption through a completely different mechanism that does not involve CYP enzyme suppression. The absorption increase is more modest, typically in the range of 30 to 45 times rather than 2,000, but it is clinically meaningful without the hormonal risk profile. If you use turmeric as a spice in food, there is no reason to stop. Culinary use does not produce the enzyme inhibition levels associated with concentrated supplements. Within 1 week of stopping the high piperine formulation, most individuals begin to notice small improvements in sleep depth. Within 2 to 3 weeks, energy patterns often begin to stabilize. Within a month, individuals on hormone replacement therapy or thyroid medication may notice their prescribing physician commenting on improved consistency in their lab results. Within 2 to 3 months, those who are experiencing the hypothalamic pituitary axis blunting may begin to notice a gradual return of resilience, motivation, and cognitive clarity. Do not repeat these critical errors. First, do not assume that a supplement is safe simply because it is natural. Piperine is a potent pharmacological agent. Its enzyme inhibition is not gentle. Second, do not stop any prescription medication without speaking to your physician first. This video is about supplements, not medications. Third, do not assume these effects apply equally to everyone. Individual variation in CYP enzyme genetics means some people are significantly more affected than others, but there is no reliable way to know which group you fall into without clinical monitoring. Treat this information like any important health update, not with panic, with attention, and with the clear understanding that your body can correct course if you give it the right conditions. So today, we have walked through 7 distinct ways in which the combination of turmeric and black pepper, specifically through concentrated supplementation with piperine, can disrupt hormonal regulation in adults over 60. We covered the effect on cortisol clearance and sleep architecture. We covered testosterone metabolism and the unintended accumulation of estradiol in men. We covered estrogen clearance in postmenopausal women and the implications for hormone replacement therapy. We examined thyroid hormone metabolism and how sensitive that system is to even modest CYP enzyme disruption. We walked through the amplification effect on common prescription medications. We looked at the paradox of blood sugar dysregulation in a supplement widely marketed for its metabolic benefits. And we arrived at the master hormonal control system, the hypothalamic pituitary axis, and what chronic enzyme disruption can do to the body's most fundamental endocrine regulatory mechanism. Each of these effects carries its own specific impact, but they do not operate in isolation. They overlap, they compound, and in individuals who have been taking this combination daily for extended periods, they may together produce a hormonal environment that is meaningfully different from what the body would achieve on its own. My core message here is not fear. It is not to suddenly abandon everything in your supplement cabinet. My message is empowerment. You now hold information that most people will go their entire lives without hearing, not because it is hidden in the conspiratorial sense, but because the gap between what is in the scientific literature and what reaches the average person's awareness is still enormous. And closing that gap one conversation at a time is precisely why I make these videos. videos. So here is the challenge I would like to leave with you. For the next 30 days, if you have been using a curcumin supplement with piperine, commit to switching to a non-piperine formulation or to a turmeric and food approach only. Pay attention to how you feel. You observe your sleep, your energy, your mood, and if you are on any prescription medications, keep your appointments and let your physician know what you have changed. Your hormonal system will thank you. Your independence will thank you. I think back often to James, the retired accountant from Boston, sitting across from me after seeing his glucose numbers stabilize for the first time in months. There was relief in his face, but more than that, there was something I see often in this work. The quiet satisfaction of understanding what was actually happening, of not being left to wonder, of having the information needed to make a real decision. That is what you deserve as well. If this video has genuinely helped you, please do not keep it to yourself. Tap like, subscribe, so you keep receiving research-backed health guidance built for adults over 60. And share this video with someone you care about. You could be changing their life without even knowing it. And now I would like to hear from you. Will you check your supplement labels today? Write your answer in the comments. I truly want to read your story. Because remember this, age does not take away your body's capacity to heal. It simply asks you to care for it the right way. Take good care of yourself. Of